Welcome to Beacon Bits. I'm your co-host, Serge Boudreau, and every episode I will be joined by my co-host, Yves Boudreau. We delve into the world of work from the employer and employee viewpoint. Kick back, relax, and let's talk work. Beacon Bits starts right now.
Welcome to Beacon Bits. My name is Yves Boudreau, and I'm here with my co-host, Serge Boudreau. And today we're going to be talking about AI in hiring. So Serge, there was a video that made the rounds last week on social media, 15-minute video of Reid Hoffman talking to his AI twin. I'm sure you've seen it. I have an opinion on it. I know you have an opinion on things. So why don't we dive in and you tell me what your thoughts were on that video as a whole?
Yeah, pretty scary in some ways because it was so realistic, and it took me a second to try to figure out, is this the right or the left? Who's the real Reid Hoffman? And a little bit more context. Reid Hoffman was the founder of LinkedIn and is a well-known name in the tech industry. So not shocking that he did this video, but it scared me as a person that works in recruitment because I sent you a video as well of one of the first interviewing tools that is completely AI. And this kind of reminded me of that. And then I'm trying to figure out what they mean by AI twin, because I'm thinking what they do is take the information that he's recorded on podcasts, posted on LinkedIn and videos over the years, and they create a twin of him? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I think in this case, he wrote a book as well. So I imagine they fed it with essentially all the content that Reid Hoffman might have created over the years to try to get it to as close of his personality as possible and to also try to answer the questions in a way that Reid Hoffman would likely answer those same questions if he was asked. So if you have a lot of content online, you might be able to do a twin with all the episodes you've recorded of the Recruitment Flex over the years.
I don't have a lot of video though, so that's part of the problem. But I don't know if the world is ready for a twin of Serge Boudreau. Maybe Yves, that could be the case. But what's your thoughts here? Is it scary? Is it something that excites you?
I mean, I love technology, and so I love parts of it, and parts of it scare me. I think that's probably the general feeling for everyone. I wouldn't even say it scares me personally, and it scares me for what it means for society.
Yeah.
And what it means for people who aren't as tuned in as you and I and other people in technology. So what I thought was interesting about it was, first and foremost, it just shows how quickly it's progressing.
Yeah.
To go from ChatGPT being the kind of the first real generative AI tool that was released a little over a year ago to now having a full-fledged AI twin. What I didn't like about the video is just some of the political responses to their own questions. And one in particular, I just rolled my eyes a little bit, which was the answer to the fear of what does it mean for jobs? What does it mean for the future? And I honestly thought that Reid Hoffman pretty much gave a bullshit answer. To say some people are going to get it, some people are going to get it with difficulty, and some people are just not going to get it. And it's going to be up to AI to help those people figure it out. And I think he used the steam engine as well as an example of Europe being ahead of North America when they embraced the steam engines much sooner than we did in North America. I just don't think this is a steam engine thing. There's truly roles and jobs that will be impacted, and I don't think it's a one-to-one ratio as far as replacing those roles. But yeah, I thought that was a bit of a bullshit answer, to be honest.
Interesting.
Other than that, if you watch probably like a half an hour to an hour, I think you would forget that it's an AI on one side. It was that impressive. I don't know if you also picked up the moment where he was talking and it almost looked like AI was bored, like looking away, and it was just tapping on the desk. So yeah, I think there's some real use cases for it, but I think there's also some really irresponsible ways of moving forward on it right now.
That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about someone seeing it not from the hiring or recruitment space and be like, oh, I'm going to build a tool that we can interview everyone with AI, forgetting there is a huge human element when it comes to getting hired, and to completely just move in the way of AI without any personalization throughout the process. I just don't think that's where we're going. I think overall AI is going to be leveraged in the hiring process, and we're going to talk a lot more about that. But the human's never going to go away. And to your concern about what's going to happen to jobs and how many jobs are going to be replaced, I still think it's too early. Like if we think about when ChatGPT came out in November, I think it was November 2022, I thought automatically like this is going to change the world in 3 months where everyone's going to lose their job. Maybe not that
Mhm.
deep.
Yeah.
We have seen progress and we have seen some pretty cool things, but I still don't think we're a year to 2 years from it revamping our hiring process, how we leverage AI in everything we do. 10 years is not out of the equation. I know that seems like forever of it be completely different than what it is now. I might be wrong because I'm going based on past history of how we've used technology in hiring. And there's a lot of examples of things that have been leveraged in consumer marketing, but on the HR or talent acquisition side, we're 20 years after and we still haven't adopted it. On that note, Eve, how about we jump into AI and hiring and how we can leverage it and how it's being leveraged right now and best practice, and we can talk about the risk as well.
Mm.
So how about we jump into your thoughts of how can companies leverage AI in their current hiring process?
First and foremost, it depends on the companies. It's going to sound like a broken record for me to say that there's not a one solution fits all in this industry. Just like AI will disrupt a lot of roles, I think some industries will be more impacted quickly than others. For me, I would like to see AI being used to remove some of the repetitive process that
Yeah.
doesn't impact the decision making at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Things like being able to send a courtesy notice to someone who applied for a role who's not a good fit, or to be able to even provide feedback on what the gaps were or things like that. But things that don't necessarily impact the decision making process would be, in my opinion, the first step of utilizing AI. But there are some things I think that inefficiencies within the hiring process that can exist today that doesn't tell you whether this is a good candidate or a bad candidate for your role. But here are things to pay attention to. Here are things to
Mm.
have a look at, perhaps even summarizing the resume visually in some ways or doing that first pass, because especially high volume recruiters spend about 3-4 seconds on that initial resume to just quickly glance and do an initial assessment. So is there anything that we can do in that little window of 3, 4, 5 seconds or even 10 seconds on the higher end of it to say, okay, here are the highlights of this individual? And then perhaps there are things that don't get lost in bad resumes or don't get lost in poorly formatted resumes. I think that's the starting point, but I still have concerns over the amount of biasness that exists even with AI today. I think there's a path where it's not as much of a concern in the future, but right now I'd be concerned about anything that tells you like, hey, Serge would be a great hire for your role as VP of sales.
Yeah, and this is where I think a lot of companies are not sure where to start. And there's a lot of startups in the HR tech space that are trying to create AI tools for everything, for matching, for assessing. And that's not new. Like, let's not forget candidate matching. There's companies in 2017 that launched products that were designed to do this. The biggest possible opportunity is it's doing the crap work that recruiters don't like doing, or some do, but they probably shouldn't be doing it. It's automating that scheduling of interviews. That is extremely painful for everyone. If you're a small business, creating a job ad from scratch is an extremely painful thing to do. And there's some great tools, and Career Beacon has a great job description generator. It works well. And we're seeing them built into ATS. And this is a very common one, but it's a massive time helper, especially if you're at a very small company, you've never had job description. It's a good place to start. I do advise in anything that you're leveraging when it comes to AI generative content is you should be reviewing it and adjusting it and personalizing. But aside from there, it's a great place to start. And there is companies that do it differently. There's a ton of companies out there that are doing the matching or doing some different type of scoring. The one company that I think is the coolest is Paradox, because they're not looking at matching at all. They're not looking at giving any score. They're just making the process way smoother, leveraging an AI chatbot that has been trained for decades, right? Which they've seen a lot of success. McDonald's is leveraging them. So a candidate can go through the whole hiring process and not realize they were talking to an AI chatbot. It's that good. You mentioned a couple of things as far as what the potential risk and Leveraging AI can create some biases. There is a lot of eyeballs on it right now with the EEOC in the US recently went after Workday saying if you're doing anything that is scoring, you're basically acting as an employment firm and
Mhm.
you have to follow the same regulations when it comes to candidate selections. No one thinks that case is actually going to go true. It's going to get dismissed, but they're just firing a warning shot out there to all the big companies like you better have your ducks in an order because we're coming, we have eyes on this, which should concern a lot of startups in this space, in my opinion.
Again, it's one of those things that I think everyone's trying to figure out what will be the policies around it. Europe is trying, they've recently updated their GDPR to address some of the AI functions within tools and the way the data is being used and the sensitivity of the data. But every new technology goes through these processes where the biggest companies that are using it are the first ones who get flagged at, because as you said,
Yeah.
they're using them to make an example. So that other companies maybe proceed a little bit more cautiously or with some responsibility to doing it with the best intent at the end of the day. But the same thing happened with blockchain, crypto, e-com at its peak until people really start to understand it more, figure out how is it going to be utilized in the day-to-day process. There's no doubt that it's going to be the path that most companies are going to use in the future. There's no putting it back in the box. AI will be leveraged in hiring, but how can it be done in a way that we make sure that it doesn't create biasness? Because at the end of the day, we're talking about people who are missing out on life-changing opportunities because an algorithm has decided that because their resume might not be the best format or their resume might be interpreted differently than the actual person because of the way that AI has been instructed to evaluate it. But I do think that the technology of the last 10 years was mostly crap. We explored our own scoring mechanisms and we quickly trashed it because there was just no way for us to feel
Mm,
confident that it was being fair to
yeah.
evaluate. It was okay for evaluating the ones that were really off, but the middle part, which made up most of the people in that gray area, it was terrible. So we decided to scrap it because we would not have the credibility. So I think AI will be way better than the matching technologies of the last 10 years, but I think it'll take time for it to get there. The other thing too about AI matching, it's also the people. It's going to sound like trivial to say, but if your instructions to your AI platform is find me 10 other surges because he's good and he knows this stuff and he's great to work with and he's got the experience, then that's when biasness happens. Because as an organization, you're like, okay, give me less of Eve and more of Surge. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to build the right company. But if you're telling me, here's what I have as a composition on the team today, here are the skill sets that we have, here are the
Yeah.
individuals and the personality traits and all of those things, help me identify those gaps and address those gaps with the next individuals we bring in the organization, then AI at that point may actually serve the purpose that it's intended for.
Yeah, I agree. And what was really interesting is when I read The Algorithm, the book by Hilke Shellman, it gave some really specific examples of where this went sideways. There's a big risk for companies that are going to be leveraging AI tool because until it's tested in court, it's the end user's problem, right? So say you're running a company, you're leveraging an AI tool to do some matching, something goes wrong, you're the one being held liable. So this puts a lot of concerns, especially if you're running a small to mid-sized firm. Like you can't do a full assessment on their algorithm in the back. Like you don't have the skill set internally to be able to do that.
Yeah, the small businesses in general, even today, are always under-equipped for a lot of HR
Yeah.
practices in general. How many small businesses have even employee manuals? And so if you think about, in some ways, maybe employee manuals is actually a good one for that AI can help generate for companies.
A
Good
hundred
idea.
percent.
Good idea there for someone who wants to build another AI product. But the small businesses, they're not the ones that are going to be in the crossfires of these, but they are going to go along because they're not going to know any better as well. Like a lot of organizations aren't going to understand what makes a biased decision, right? Because they don't have someone in the organization thinking about those things, thinking about how their hiring decisions impact the company, the culture. Yeah, so small businesses could benefit if AI actually gets to the point where it can handle biasness better than it does today, which I think it will. That I actually feel strongly about it, that it will eventually. to some degree. Better, not saying great, but better than what it is now.
Well, I
Um,
think for small business, this is where the candidate scheduling, the job description generator, all this stuff, that is like having an additional admin person internally instead of hiring one. Great. But I agree on the matching itself. They're not ready. And I don't think the technology is ready at the level that we need it.
but you have all the tools that help you along the process, as you mentioned earlier, like creating a job posting, getting candidates, scheduling the interviews, even the interview note taking and transcripts on
Yeah.
those interviews afterwards. You're creating more time for you to actually spend time doing a human evaluation of the person that's applying for your job and making that decision based on all the data points that you collected along the process, not necessarily just AI. But there's also a ton of value of just triaging that needs to happen because
Yeah.
there is a lot of people applying for jobs that they're not even nearly qualified for. There's a ton of volume there. So to me, I don't want to be an asshole, but that's just distraction and noise for a lot of employers because you have someone who's just like spray and praying. And so I think there's valued use cases there.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm curious how you feel about candidates leveraging AI to apply to hundreds, if not thousands, a job a day. What's your take there? Because that's hard. That's hard for employers.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to if anyone's familiar with like email outreach, right? Like email spam, everyone gets it.
Yeah.
It doesn't work well. Like you're just sending out emails to unqualified leads you're just desperately trying to get in front of. It's the same process for applying for jobs. If you're just doing spray and pray and you're basically think that's going to work for you, if you send a note out to 1,000 companies hoping that one of them is going to pick up the phone or reply to your email. It's the same approach to me. Even email outreach has been scaled back in recent years to go back to personal outreach. Instead of sending 1,000 emails a day, like companies are now telling their sales development reps craft 20, 50, 100 really good personalized emails in a week. And the conversion on those has been a lot higher. I think it's the same for jobs. If you're not spending a little bit of time personalizing your application to show that you actually know who you're applying for and a
Yeah.
sense of excitement for the job itself, yeah, there's no way that you're going to make it through the final cut.
Yeah, this is where, in one end, I get it from candidates
Totally.
because, first of all, if you're having a hard time finding a job, you're going to use any tool that you can, right? If someone
Yep.
comes to you and be like, hey, we can apply for 1,000 jobs. But then I'm like, how is there even 1,000 jobs to apply for? Are you in New York City? You got to be in a major center, right? Or only
Remote
applying
work.
for remote roles. But I agree. It's not doing them any favor. I think it's actually hurting them in the process. But I get why they're getting it. I still think 2024 is going to be the year that a robot interviews a robot in that sense without realizing it. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I could definitely see it happen. There is definitely for certain types of roles, there is a level of desperation too right now that I totally sympathize with, empathize with. But I still feel at the end of the day, if you're willing to spend an hour to send out 1,000 resumes, and the ones who like post on social media who share their experiences, they're the exception in some ways. Like I know one posted that he had applied for, I think 100 jobs in one shot and then got 14 interviews.
Yeah.
And then everyone's going to get excited around that. But it's not going to necessarily translate to other types of roles. Like this person has a big social following. It's obviously someone who's had some experience in the industry before. It doesn't mean that someone just coming out of school or someone that sends out 1,000 application is going to get 14 interviews or even a single interview.
Yeah, you're right. And there is really bad examples of what's happened and gone wrong with these providers for employers. If you're assessing these different AI tools, and when you're looking at a talent acquisition solution, a couple of things that you should be checking is show me under the hood. They have to show you what's under the
Mhm.
hood. There is different companies out there or different associations that are actually verifying how their systems are set up, if the algorithm is creating any biases. I definitely recommend looking at all of those. But the biggest advice, don't get AI for the sake of AI. What are you trying to do? You're trying to solve a problem. And there's a good chance that problem can be solved with things like automation, which is not the same thing as AI, right? So don't go in with, I need AI. Go in with, what problem am I trying to solve? And then go from there. Any advice on your end when it comes to employers or job seekers?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, don't try to solve everything at once.
Yeah.
A lot of them want like a solution that fixes all the problems. So figure out what is the number one bottleneck that's preventing you from doing more hiring or spending more time evaluating candidates. The other thing too is go in knowing that next 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 years, it's going to be an evolving solution. Whatever you think is solving your problem today may already
Yeah.
be outdated tomorrow. There's literally things coming out on the market like every few days right now. There's still going to be the ones like the Workdays, the Paradox that have established reputation and trust in their brands that companies are going to go to, especially larger organizations that are going to go to help solve those problems. So it's going to be still really difficult for smaller businesses to put their foot through the door with a solution that is just one part of the hiring funnel. If it doesn't solve it from A to Z, I think on the job seeker side, more concerning for me, it's like take a step back. I don't know what your thoughts are on the job seeker side, but quickly on my end, I just feel like the ones that are going to really stand out in the next wave of app people applying are going to find a way to stand out and not be that robotic kind of like resume that looks and reads the same and has a very obvious AI copy. I'll give you a quick little story. We went to a job fair back in 2015 for alongside our previous company. And it was interesting because it was like AI in real life in some ways, because we had a little booth set up and obviously we could only talk to a certain amount of people at the same time. So then students would just drop by and drop a resume on like the pile and just keep walking. And I thought right away, this is odd. Like, how the hell am I going to remember who that person was? Also, why would they not take a moment to talk to see if it's a good fit? And then one person was smart enough and came over and said, hey, I know you're really busy right now. You got a lot of people that are waiting to talk to you. So I'm going to put a smiley face on my resume so that when you go through them after, you'll remember. And I did. And we hired that person. Right.
Oh,
Because to me, it just made me think that person evaluated the situation, understood that we were a little bit swamped with trying to talk to everyone that was there, but also didn't want to just drop their resume in a pile. What is that version of that in the future where you can stand out? Does that mean applying and then also sending a note to the person if you can find who's the hiring manager and just letting them know, hey, I just wanted to let you know I've applied for a job and I'm really excited about the opportunity of working for your company. I know that will annoy some people because they don't want to get bombarded by a bunch of emails, but
you're so right. Especially where we are currently, a little bit of effort, you are going to stand above everyone else because no one is putting any effort in this actual process, right? Little things like we talk about cover letters and all that fun stuff. It's maybe the time that you start thinking about doing cover letters again because no one is, right? And I'll be honest, as a recruiter, I rarely read them, but now they're so rare that it's like maybe, and I'm not, don't do a chat GPT cover letter, do a real personalized cover letter and even have links to say your portfolio. What I've seen done and is really worked well is folks that are doing their own little portfolio, not even as designers, creating this like landing page with the key things they have achieved with as much social and real proof as you can in this portfolio, you're going to stand out. And it's not that much effort. And to your point, reaching out to the recruiter, not a bad thing too. Don't expect a response, especially with how many reach out they do get. But just applying for 1,000 jobs, you're wasting your time. You're creating this noise of 1,000 applicants for one job, and recruiters are not going to go through all those resumes. And that's where we need to get more AI to give us better scoring. It's a bad cycle.
yeah, applying for multiple jobs, even within one company, to me has always been a really bad
Yeah.
signal. Like, I could see maybe one or two jobs that are really closely related and you have the skill sets to do both. But we used to hear stories of candidates just applying for all jobs that are available at an
Yeah.
organization. And that's like literally saying it's the worst signal that you can send. But I think you're right. There is a lot of opportunities with AI for someone to stand out. And I think for
Yeah.
employers as well, if you got all these tools that can help you with the administrative part of your hiring, you can spend a bit more time focusing on your employer brand and how you can differentiate yourself from other companies that are hiring. So those are like the intangible kind of positives of AI. And I think if employers and job seekers leverage these tools efficiently, they can really benefit from it. But if this spray and pray on both sides, is just never going to work.
Nope. And you're right. There's an opportunity for both sides. And on the recruiter side or the talent acquisition side, this is where you can bring up your game. That personalization brings it to the next level. If you can have a lot of those tasks automated and your recruiters are really focused on hiring managers and the candidates, changes the game. But how about we end it on this? A lot of recruiters are worried that AI is going to replace them. Do you think AI is going to replace recruiters?
I think it's going to replace the bad ones.
Yes. And there's a lot of bad ones. I hate to say that.
Yeah, you've been closer to that particular side of the industry that I have, but that's the truth though for almost any jobs impacted by AI, not just recruiters, but I think if you're a creative person, if you're a developer, if you're anyone who is already feeling the impact of AI today, like whether you're seeing more tools in your space or you're seeing the tools that you're working with embed more AI, if you're not leveraging them, then yeah, you are at risk. But if you're a recruiter who actually understands how to leverage AI, you're going to be a rock star. There's going to be tons of opportunities, not just within the company you're working at now, but you're going to be really sought after. But if you're still trying to do everything with Excel spreadsheets today and you haven't even made the leap to like some form of automation tools at this
Mm.
point in 2024, then you probably have some catching up to do.
Overall, I think AI in hiring is going to help. I just don't think it's going to happen in the scale or the level that we think it's going to happen in the next 5 years. It's coming and it's moving really quickly. So, do you think 5 years is too long? Do you think it's going to have a dramatic impact in the next year, per se?
I think 5 years feels like the right window, but you look at the video that we talked about earlier in the podcast,
Yeah.
the AI twin, that's a year and a half. So I think it is faster and everyone's adopting it to the point where AI is getting like, I love the technology and I love everything that's happening, but even I'm tired of mentioning AI here and AI there. But it is happening. I think everyone has a responsibility to figure out what it means for them. Don't wait for your employer, your boss to tell you, like, hey, you need to start using this. If you have or if you want to prolong your career, you need to like be, what does it mean for me? Like, what does it mean
Yeah.
for the next 10, 15, 20 years and get ahead of it? If not, you're going to be left behind really quickly.
Major change brings major opportunity in this case.
I think so. The last thing I'll say about AI is you saw the warehouse robot that collapsed after 20 hours. You saw BMW announce their first humanoid robots that are going to have in factories, Tesla as well. An interview that I thought was really interesting that Peter Thiel, who was also part of the original PayPal mafia with Reid Hoffman from Palantir, he was basically saying that any jobs that require mathematical skills are at risk, that in 3 to 4 years from now, AI will be able to solve any mathematical equation in the world. He was even suggesting that students should go into philosophy in university because what he's saying is that the real future of working with AI is going to be in your ability to debate AI because AI is going to make recommendations. And if you take AI at face value for everything that it tells you that you should be doing or the best solution to a certain problem, you don't have the ability to understand whether that is the right solution
Yeah.
or the ability to debate or to provide context, then that's where AI isn't going to be leveraged in a way that's good for humanity. But he's suggesting a lot of future university students go back into philosophy as an approach because that will be the in-demand roles in the future.
I'm actually glad to hear that because I'm really bad at math. So, yeah, philosophy.
Are you involved in sales?
I know how to count up, but I don't know how to divide or
We'll
minus,
count
right?
down.
No, I don't know how to count down, but no, I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. There's a lot of things where the core skill set that we taught our kids, if you're good at math, man, your life is going to be great. That might not be the case anymore. And we might see a resurgence of what we call the artists. people that are coming from that space.
We'll talk about that more in the next episode when we do part 2.
Yes, we want to talk about AI at work and how we leverage it. But on that note, another episode of Beacon Bits, and I do not have any reference to bacon and eggs or anything like that this week. So, Eve, this was fun. Thanks for doing this again.
I'm really disappointed.
Salute.
Au revoir.